perfect layout for your controls screen. You can add new controls, and there's a whole massive list of them to search through here and surface things that you do often. And right now, these are basically all Apple app controls. What I'm more interested in though is, I mean, these are all controls, like I said, not widgets. So they're for controlling things very directly, like turning on Wi-Fi or turning up the brightness. And so Apple has said that third-party apps are going to be able to build in controls as well. So there's none here now, but I very much look forward to like a one-touch turning on the AC in the car, or one-touch opening up the barcode scanner in my calorie tracker app or something like that. So just having more controls surfaced in here, that's gonna be pretty sweet. We've also noticed this new flashlight control, which when you click it allows you to control both the intensity and the beam width of the torch for some reason. The intensity part definitely works. The beam width, I don't know if I'm as convinced on that one, but I guess it's still really cool UI. Oh, also, there's a new button up here to turn off your phone, kind of like Android added a while ago in the settings. But also, you can now finally change the controls on your lock screen now. From the default, which has been the flashlight and the camera for forever, you can hold down, customize, lock screen, and get in there and go to town. Again, I hope there's third-party ones that end up here, but there's already a ton of options. I'm excited to set mine to my to-do list app someday. But that brings us to number 4, the number 4 best new iOS 18 feature, and that's the Passwords app. You know, every once in a while, there's just a new update that installs a new app on everyone's phones and just drops it on your home screens, so this is one of them. But essentially what this is just breaking out all of the password tools that were previously buried in the settings on the phone and making it an app. So your iPhone's been saving your passwords for a while now, saving Wi-Fi passcodes, remembering all this stuff. This app is just a super simple way of finding it all in one place, searching through that stuff, and making sense of it. Plus, it also supports some new features. So there's two-factor authentication and passkeys. And then there's a couple extra things on top that may be good enough to get you to switch from whatever password manager app you're using on your iPhone to Apple's Passwords app. So at the bottom left, you can create shared passwords and passkeys within a group of trusted contacts. Works with other people with iPhones anyway. And then when you're signing up for some new account somewhere, it'll do the same thing it always does. It offers a super secure password and then offers to remember it for you. But what I found interesting is it doesn't really have like a master password. It just seems on the iPhone to default to Face ID. So if you've got Face ID on your iPhone, it'll ask for that to log in, no master password. Really, the main reason I'm not going to be using this app is because I stole daily an Android phone, and of course they did not make an Android version of this Passwords app. They did make a Mac app, and they also did make a Chrome extension, which is interesting, but yeah, no Android app, and I still log into a bunch of stuff on Android, so it's not for me. But number 3 is gonna have to be the new home screen customization. Some of you might have expected this to be higher, like number 1 or number 2, but I have my reasons, and maybe let me know if you agree with them. So the day has finally come. There is new customization stuff available to iPhone home screens. Kinda. I mean, there's some good stuff and also some weird stuff. I'll start with the stuff I like. Here's the easy part. iPhone users can now put their icons anywhere on their home screens that they want. Welcome to 2024, iPhone users. Who's got it better than you? Now, everything still snaps to the grid, of course, but now you can actually put icons on the right side or the bottom of your home screen where they'll actually be reachable and they won't have to snap back up to the top. How cool is that? First they give you widgets, now they give you this. It's unbelievable stuff. But now, okay, if you want to customize even further, you hold down on anywhere on the home screen and there's a little edit button at the top. You hit that and then you hit customize, and then this is it. This is the entire home screen customization menu now for the iPhone. So you can go dark mode, which tints your wallpaper a little darker and then sets your icons that have a dark mode version to dark mode. Or you could set light mode, which is the opposite. It sets your icons to light and it tints your wallpaper light. And then automatic, but there's also this large button here, which just makes all of your icons larger, but then also removes the text. Honestly, kind of clean, not gonna lie. But then there's this tinted button, which feels kind of cursed. So this is already kind of a weird looking icon. When you click it, it lets you tint the color of all the icons on your home screen to a single matching color, which sounds kind of cool in theory to match your wallpaper. And actually, there's even a color picker to drop exactly the same color that you're using from your wallpaper as your tint color. But there's just something about this tint that I can't quite get right. Like, I haven't gotten any combination to really look that good at all. Now, there's been some updates on this since the first beta. Still doesn't look great, like it looks better than before, but here's what I think is going on. There are certain apps that are like pretty simple and high contrast icons that look fine. Like some of them are Apple apps, some of them are third-party apps. And then especially Apple widgets. Like look at this weather widget. That looks great. That looks really solid with this nice accent color because it keeps everything really readable. But then there are also some third-party app icons and widgets that just look completely illegible. Like they need to be updated to support this tinting thing in a more contrasty way. So it's the mixing of these two that look weird. Like even on my home screen, look at Carrot, like the weather app or Superlist, they look worse than the rest of the icons on my home screen. I think the standard that they're aiming for is like a dark gray background with a tinted glyph in the middle instead of the whole thing being tinted. So it is what it is. I will also say Google has also tried this with Material U in Android, and it also kind of went weird in its own different, unique way. Basically, it would set all the icons to a monochrome version, but if an app didn't support it, it just didn't.
Taking a knee.
Taking fire. Reloading.
Half toast, half the roast.
I'm down, brothers.
Oh no, there's another squad. Crack the bad news shield. Woohoo, that's gonna kick.
I still have an upgrade to choose.
Reloading.
I've chosen an upgrade. Skill is the best accessory.
Let's go here.
Taking fire! It's your lucky day. I got you.
Reloading.
Cover for my brothers. Gotta heal. Taking a knee.
Hold on, I need to heal.
Using meds. Come on.
Recharging shields.
Recharging shields.
Round 2.
Heads up, we're not alone.
Countdown.
Let's check out this way. Giving my shields a recharge.
Being delivered.
Replicators on the way, amigos.
Welcome to the shop. I've got just the thing for you.
Longbow here.
Don't mind if I do. Nice choice. You've got good taste.
Rings a long way ahead. Know
Let's
your
head that way.
positions.
Seconds, but we could just walk it.
Jump pad here.
Death box here.
Woohoo, that's gonna kick.
Shield up.
We've got 30 seconds to be somewhere else if we don't want to get cooked. Jump drive in position.
Rings close.
Let's go here.
In progress.
Ring, moving now. Rápidamente.
There's someone here.
Heard that?
Care package being delivered.
Faster, faster, faster.
I feel good about this care package. Shall we?
crap.
Using jump drive. Replicator incoming. Hold on, I need to heal.
One down. They drop faster than my airstrikes. Don't worry, my brother. I got you. Ring closes in a minute.
I leveled up. Time to refine my skills. Ah, what a lovely new upgrade. Go there.
Heard that? Ring's not far.
Shield battery here.
Thank you.
Charging up my shields.
Only the best for my friends.
I say we move this way.
Shield battery here.
Thanks.
Charging shields. Come on, come on.
Jump drive.
Care package over there. Let's
Pulling
get
the
on that.
cash up.
Dibs.
Warning. Ring movement in progress.
We're already inside the range. Damn. I could use that.
I need
bro.
heavy ammo.
Yo, we should def check out that care package.
Making contact with enemy. I'm down, brother.
That's an enemy shield. We haven't won. I'm down.
Hostile over there.
Target over there.
Reloading. Care package over there.
Beginning ring countdown.
Amigos, let's go here. Can't believe I'm standing still. You're lucky, I like it.
This good for you.
Care package over there.
Change, so a lot of people had a mix of monochrome icons and colorful icons, which also doesn't look good at all. So I guess the tinting method could be considered a workaround. I'm sure people will play with this more. Icons will continue to get updates. I'm sure someday maybe it'll look great for some people, but I haven't seen that yet. But all right, number 2 for me is the little things. Again, there are a bunch of tiny little things and small features that individually are not huge, but they'll kind of feel like they add up to a bunch of useful things in the end. A lot of them didn't even make the keynote, but like game mode, for example, they talked about this. We know that when you have a game open, it gives it CPU priority and minimizes Bluetooth latency for any wireless headphones or controllers. That's a really simple thing, but it's nice. The Photos app also got a redesign, but I also am more impressed with the smart search inside of Photos. It works much better. So if I search for something like license plate, for example, not only does it recognize and find all the photos in your gallery with license plates, but it also gives you these suggestions to narrow it down to find the exact one that you're looking for. And it actually works. I've also noticed they added a bunch of shortcuts to Shazam everywhere, including an action button preset as one of the new defaults in the settings app. This wasn't here before. I thought that was interesting, and then I Googled it, and apparently Apple bought Shazam not that long ago, which I totally forgot about, so there you have more of that. And RCS support does appear to finally be live on the iPhone in 2024. It's going great. Now, as I predicted, it is still a green bubble, but you can now finally text between any modern Android phone and an iPhone and actually get high quality media. I sent myself a 3 megabyte image file from the iPhone, and I got a full quality 3 megabyte image on Android. And there's also now typing indicators and read receipts now. Reactions seem to be working well, so it's not fully integrated into a blue bubble iMessage like maybe some people were hoping, but Apple can now say that they finally did it, and now that person from that one interview doesn't have to buy his mom an iPhone. But then number one, the number one best new feature in iOS 18, bro, it's a calculator. It's actually the calculator. Now you might have thought this was just an iPad thing, because we all saw this get demoed at the keynote in iPadOS 18, but it actually is on the iPhone as well. So as a default, you open up the calculator app, it just looks like a basic calculator. This looks very familiar. But at the bottom left, there's this little toggle where you can switch to a scientific calculator. Okay, pretty classic. Or you can switch to this new thing called Math Notes. And now it basically looks like a notes app. So you can create a new note and literally just start handwriting math notes, literally. You can write an equation, and if you happen to write that equal sign, it can automatically solve that equation for you and keep it updated as you continue writing or typing. It's pretty sick. There are also all kinds of other things it can do, from variables to graphs. It's basically doing everything I was asking Wolfram Alpha to do lately. But a kind of underrated part of this is how it feels very well considered, and it's also syncing across devices just like as a bunch of notes. So your calculator just kind of gained a notes section. So if you add a bunch of stuff to notes on your iPhone, the iPad with the calculator has all of the same notes, and you can edit them on the other device. And if you happen to redefine a variable lower down in the same note, then it actually knows then from that point on to treat that variable as the new value you gave it, but keeps the old value for everything above it. It's very well impressively thought out. Now obviously this stuff is going to be easier with a bigger screen and with an Apple Pencil, but man, I was doing all of this stuff in school with a paper notebook and a TI-84, so at the risk of sounding kind of old, I totally wish I had something like this when I was in school. It's very impressive. It's doing so many things. It's recognizing my handwriting, it's obviously answering the equations I'm asking of it, but it's also writing the answers in my own handwriting, and then it's straightening everything up, and it's making everything searchable and indexable through not just that Math Notes app and all the devices, but across my whole phone. So it's pretty sick. I'm impressed by this more than anything else I've seen in iOS 18, so that's why it's my number one feature in iOS 18. But there's a whole top 5. But like I said, get subscribed to see a deep dive into Apple Intelligence. This is the thing that kind of permeates the entire iPhone and Apple's whole ecosystem, so that video is coming up soon. And that's been it for this. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.
Recharging shields.
What's up guys, my name's Brandon, and today Apple re-released iOS 18 Beta 3 to registered developers, and soon we're gonna see the iOS 18 public beta. Now along with this release, we also got iPadOS 18 Beta 3 and macOS Sequoia Beta 3 as a re-release, which just means we have a different build number, but pretty much everything else remains the same. However, there are a few minor changes that we'll talk about here in a moment. So the size, given what you just just heard, of course, is going to be small. So it's 360 megabytes on my 15 Pro Max. I would expect a very small size on macOS as well. So let's go ahead and check out the build number for this new update. So if we go to our settings, general, about 18.0, and then we can see the new build number is 22A5307I. So we went from an F at the end of the build number for the original beta 3 to an I in the re-release. And that build number is most likely going to be the same build number as iOS 18 public beta 1. And that's really the whole reason for a re-release in the first place, is to just align the build numbers between the developer beta and the public beta. Apple needs to have these on the same build number moving forward. All right, so now what's new here in the re-release of iOS 18 beta 3? Now, the first thing I noticed is inside of the messages application, if we pull up the keyboard and then go to our emoji picker down here, you'll notice that we reverted back to the original layout for the keyboard. So if you recall, in iOS 18 beta 3, these icons were large. We had very large emojis here, and we also had the Memojis as an option here in the keyboard, but for some reason Apple reverted back to the default keyboard that we saw in iOS 17 as well. So we'll see if they go back to the new layout that we saw in the original beta 3. For now, it looks just like it did on iOS 17. We also have a fix for the Apple Store crash. So before in beta 3, the Apple Store would just crash every time you tried to open it, but now it works as expected here with the re-release of beta 3. And then we also have a fix for the icon tint bug on the home screen. So if you go to customize here, a lot of people had issues when they went to tint their icons. It would be darker than it should be, but now that appears to be fixed here with beta 3, the re-release. Also, it seems much more fluid and much more stable. I don't see as much, like crazy jolty animations when changing the colors here. It seems to be a bit more fluid, and I also didn't have any issues with icons, just not having an icon. Everything worked as expected. So it seems like this whole customization section here for the icons has also improved with this re-release. Now, unfortunately, it looks like the RCS bug is still here in beta 3. So when I try to send an RCS message, it tries to send it as an iMessage instead, so it fails. So that's still present in the re-release. So hopefully that gets patched either server side or in the next beta. Now, as far as screen time goes, you guys know I've had a big issue with screen time ever since beta 1 of iOS 18. So this was fixed in the original release of beta 3, and it's still working properly here on the re-released version of beta 3, but I have had a couple of users already reach out and say that the re-release re-broke screen time. So for some reason, screen time might be broken for some users again with this re-release of beta 3, which is a little bit unfortunate, especially if that carries over to the public beta as well. Now, as far as any Apple Intelligence features or Genmoji, those of course are missing here in developer beta 3 re-release, and of course they will be missing in the first public beta as well. I don't think anybody was expecting those, but that is just confirmation that they are not here in this beta 3 re-release. This is what it could look like. This is what the Genmoji UI could look like. This is what the Apple Intelligence section inside of settings could look like. It will be in beta, of course, when it does eventually release to the public. Now, as far as the release notes go, we do have a couple of changes here. So some very minor changes, but they are different from the original release notes from beta 3. And we have one for the home app. So this is a known issue along with a workaround for this issue. So it says if a user has multiple devices running beta 1 or 2, and if you onboarded home with a utility account, the account might get offboarded when one device is upgraded to beta 3. And the workaround is to re-onboard home utility account only after upgrading all devices to beta 3. And then the only other change in the release notes is under messages, new features, and RCS messaging is available on select carrier. So for some reason that was not included in the beta 3 release notes, but it's included in the re-release. So hopefully we do see some type of improvement to RCS. But as far as the overall performance goes, I would actually expect performance to be a tiny bit better here in this re-release of beta 3. I know know it was a small update, only 300 and something megabytes, but we already saw a few bug fixes, including the Apple Store fix. We saw the icon tint bug get fixed. So I would expect beta 3, this re-release here, and of course the public beta, to be a bit more stable than what we saw with the original developer beta 3 updates, but I don't expect it to be anything major. I did also run a Geekbench test. I know this doesn't always tell you the whole story, but I did score a 2830 on the single core and a 6816 on the multi-core, which is not great. So, you know, it's kind of in line with the original beta 3. It's really not a big difference in the Geekbench scores or the overall stability so far, aside from those minor bug fixes. But yeah, performance overall, don't expect a major jump, but I would expect it to fix a few of the bugs that you may have been encountering previously. And then when it comes to battery life, we're kind of in the same situation here as well. So don't expect any type of major change with the battery life here in iOS 18 beta 3 of release. And of course, this is going to be most likely the same build as the first public beta. So if you are planning to install the first public beta of iOS 18, do not expect the battery life to be great, because it's not. Now, I'm not going to say it's the worst thing ever, because I've definitely seen worse, but it is going to be a good bit worse than iOS 17 if you're coming from a stable build of iOS 17, like 17.5 or even 17.6 betas. You are going to have a worse experience with battery life here on the iOS 18 public beta 1 or developer beta 3. Okay, so now let's talk about when to expect iOS 18 public beta, and of course the fourth developer beta, which will also be public beta 2. So first off, I would expect the public beta to come either later today, tomorrow, or just sometime this week in general. So last year, with iOS 17, Apple released the public beta one day after the re-release of beta 3. So if Apple follows what they did last year, that means that on Tuesday the 16th, we should see public beta 1. However, this could also come really at any time this week. Apple doesn't really have a rhyme or reason to a lot of things they do. They don't necessarily stick to a, for sure schedule every single year. So things could change, but I would expect to see the public beta at least at some point this week. Now, as far as when to expect iOS 18 beta 4, I would not expect that until the week of July 29th, most likely on July 30th on a Tuesday. Of course, again, Apple could change this at any time, but based on the past 2 years, we got the fourth beta 2 weeks after the re-release of beta 3. So if Apple follows what they did with iOS 16 and iOS 17, we should see developer beta 4 and that second public beta on the week of July 29th. Now, will that include Apple Intelligence features? I don't know. Of course, we do know that Siri 2.0, the big Siri update, is not going to come until 2025. I talked about that in Apple Weekly this past weekend. So don't expect the new Siri. We are going to see the new Siri UI and ChatGPT and some other AI changes, but we're not going to see the new, complete overhaul to Siri anytime soon. And by the way, I have had quite a few people mention and kind of ask me if they can switch to the public beta from the developer beta. And the answer to that is yes. You just need to go into your settings, general software updates, and then you just go into beta updates right here and switch it from developer beta to public beta. And keep in mind, the build number of this new re-release of beta 3 is likely going to be the exact same as the first public beta. So if you switch after installing the re-release, you're not going to see the public beta populate until the next round of betas come out. So that is just an update on iOS 18 beta 3, the re-release. You are not going crazy. Apple did push out a second, version, a second iteration of iOS 18 beta 3. So hope you guys enjoyed this short video, and I hope to see the public beta within the next 24 hours. So I will have a video coming on that as well. But if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for a lot more iOS 18 coverage. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.
It seems like there was something that you wanted the iOS 8 beta for. I don't remember what it was. I don't know if you remember what it was or not. The public beta is live. So if you want it, you might have to switch it from 7. But if you just go to your software update, you'll be able to it says iOS 17 public beta. Or it might come. I don't think it is. Okay, that's all I need. I just want to let you know. I don't remember what the thing was, but it seems like there was something. Alright, that's all I need.
The thing about starting photography is that there's so many things to learn. There's so many things to do, there's so many resources to read, there's so many people screaming their opinions out on the internet everywhere. It can be really confusing. So I'm here to answer that. This video is going to be the answer to a whole bunch of different questions I get from people that are in the first couple of years of photography. It's not specifically for people who are very green to photography, as in, you know, the first couple of weeks or first couple of months, but these tips are definitely something that you can grow into. So in this video, I'll lay down about 20 foundational tips and the basics of what you should be learning. I'll give you just enough detail to cover the points, and then if you want to go deeper into these points, then you know what to do next. All right, let's jump in and let's start with the more conceptual, art-based things first. Photography is 70% what's in the photo, 20% how you take the photo, and 10% how you edit it. Okay, sure, you can play around with these values just a little bit, but I always get asked, you know, where is a good place to focus my energy on, you know, learning? Because there's just so many things to learn. And so this particular breakdown of photography accentuates the fact that having good foundations, having a very strong initial image is a great place to start. It's not about gear, it's not about the edit. Well, it is a little bit, but the majority of it is starting with a very good foundational photo and having the basics right first. From there, then you can then craft it, understand how you want to take that photo, and then edit it to just give it those final touches. There's a saying that is a little bit vulgar in the Australian lexicon, and that is, you can't polish a turd. Which, you know, you can sprinkle glitter all over, you know, a piece of poop if you want, but it's still at the end of the day a piece of poop. So that's kind of what the essence is of this particular point. You want to make sure that your foundational image, first and foremost, is as good as it can be. So when you're out there in the field, look for things like subject and layout and composition and color and space and lighting. These things are far more important than how you take a photo or what your eventual edit looks like in Lightroom. The real secret to getting better at photography is vision. And here is a breakdown of what vision actually means in terms of a photography sense. But the essence of it is that visual language, doesn't matter what medium you're using, uses the idea of what's in here. Your vision, your mind, your imagination. And that is the defining factor between whether a photographer is good or not. Again, similar to the last point, it's not about the gear, it's not about the edit, it's about how the photographer chooses to see the world and how they decide to express their vision. Understand what good looks like as fast as you can. This is also known as good taste. What you need to do is expose yourself to a lot of good photography and start to subconsciously immerse yourself in that world so that you understand what good photography looks like, so that you understand what that level is, and then you can take your own work and emotionally detach yourself from it and compare yourself with how the standard is. You know, are you up to the standard of what professional photographers do, or are you up to the standard of, you know, an amateur or a beginner? Like, where are you in that range? So in psychology, there's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically, in this context, what will happen is in your first, say, 1 to 2 years of you doing photography, you'll think that your work is the best thing since sliced bread. You'll be totally enamored and totally in love with your work, and that's totally fine. But as you get more exposed into what good looks like, as you get more into the industry, into the community, into the hobby, you'll find that your work maybe isn't as good as you once thought it was. And from there, once you know even more and you've practiced even more, it's only then that your skill level starts to match the level of professional, of the market, of, you know, the high level that you want to hit, that watermark, right? And that's totally fine. That's the way the cookie crumbles. That is the process that most people go through. Just make sure that throughout that entire journey, throughout that entire U-shaped journey, that you are objectively trying to remove your emotions out of your images, and that makes you a lot more objectively able to handle whatever you're creating and contrasting that with everyone else. Look to other forms of visual art for inspiration. In addition to absorbing as much photography work as you can, also consider different visual mediums like painting, movies, you know, video, illustration, architecture, anything you can get your hands on. Find out what you gravitate towards, what you like, what your interests are, because your uniqueness is the combination of your interests, and the earlier you can start to fuse these things into your work, the more time you will give yourself to, you know, become a little bit more unique, a little bit more different in your approach to your photography than everyone else. Style isn't something you should really worry about at the beginning. Don't worry too much about having a style at the beginning. Your style at the beginning is everything, and it's supposed to be like that. If you want a full deep dive into what style in photography specifically means, check out my video on that right here or in the link in the description below. Okay, let's talk about some tips on what I call the craft of photography, the execution of photography, the exposure triangle. Okay, let's bring this back to basics because so many people skip over this and aren't as good at this as they could be. So the exposure triangle is an easy way to picture the three things, the three elements that dictate the exposure of your overall picture. They are shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. What you want is to be so good at the exposure triangle that you can simply just flick a couple of dials and know that one stop here, one stop there will give you the exposure that you're looking for. Because sometimes, depending on the style of photography you're doing, split seconds matter. So get really, really good at it. So good that you don't even need to look at your camera. Now, the priority of how you should be approaching this exposure triangle goes shutter speed first, aperture, and then ISO in order of importance. And because shutter speed is so important, I made an entire video on how to get sharp shots every single time with a very prominent focus on shutter speed, and you can find that here or in the description box. Photography rules are a way to think about them. Rephrase the idea of photography rules with visual patterns. So things like the rule of thirds, symmetry, leading lines, frames, a whole bunch of that stuff, right? Because these visual patterns have certain implicit meaning in their creation, and when you learn them and then when you break them, sometimes when they're broken, they no longer have the original meaning that they once had. And that's important to understand. And the game is to amass as many of these visual patterns as possible to deeply understand them, why they were created, why they are effective, so that in the field you can then use them and combine them together to create far more interesting and thoughtful compositions while you're out in the field. Don't get lost in the whole like, learn photography rules so that you can break them. It's bullshit. That's just lazy teaching. show me your first 100,000 shots. Photography is one of those things that seems very easy on the surface. Seems very easy to just quickly take a snapshot and then fall in love with it and call it good, right? But to be at a professional level of photography takes a lot of time, takes a lot of grit. It takes many, many years to be both efficient at photography and to develop a style at the same time. So the point here is that, you know, most people's first couple of years of their entire catalog of shooting, the photos aren't that good, to be honest. And that's totally fine. You're learning. So the point here is that it does take a long time. So you do need to take a lot of shots, make a lot of mistakes, and learn from all of them. Break down skills and then create a habit to work on. There are so many skills to learn when it comes to photography. Every single category of photography has its own subset of skills to learn. And so a great approach might be to dive into a particular category you want to learn and then understand the entire skill set that you need to learn, break down each skill that you need to learn, pick one, and then every single week work on that every single day, the same skill for the entire week. And keep doing that until you just master the entire category of photography. Now, if you want a habit-based approach to transforming your photography, then check out my video here or in the description box. Always consider the light. High noon is a visual pattern. And if you don't understand what that sentence means, then shoot maybe an hour before or after sunset or sunrise in order to get the best light every single time. But your objective as a photographer is to essentially capture light. And it is in this understanding of how the light changes, whether it goes soft, whether it's hard, whether it's colored, whether it's flat, what these differences are and how you can best apply the correct visual patterns to the quality of light. That is, in essence, what you're doing as a photographer. You are capturing light. Everything in your photo is deliberate. As a photographer, it's your responsibility to make sure that every single thing in the composition has a purpose. So everything in the background, all the horizons and whether they're level, your bokeh, that random dude in the background, every single little element in your composition needs to earn its place because they should all be working harmoniously together to tell a particular story, right? Having an element that doesn't belong sometimes can ruin an entire image, and you might be so enamored with the subject in and of itself that, you know, you miss out on the auxiliary things that distract from the overall compositions. To make sure that every single thing that you put into your images has a purpose and a place. Subject, subject, subject. Okay, drill this into your mind. Every single photo needs a subject. Every single one. You need to be able to communicate to the viewer exactly what is the purpose of that image. And you do that through subject. Your subject needs to be the highest level in terms of visual hierarchy of importance in your composition. It is you as a photographer telling the viewer, hey, look at this thing, and then look at this thing, and see how these two things, you know, have an interplay with one another. Is there a relationship here? Is there a story here? This is the essence, the art of visual communication. You as the photographer including elements of importance and signifying them to the viewer so that they can then interpret your image in a particular way. And so it's very, very important. Make sure that every single image you have has a strong subject to look at. Move, 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 and experiment. Tripods are meant to stay in the same place, but doesn't mean that you should. If you're looking to really expedite your process and your growth as a photographer, then I would highly recommend that you move around a lot and experiment a lot with a bunch of different compositions and shoot just a lot and make a lot of mistakes, because it is in this experimentation that you start to understand what you like, what you don't like, what is good, what is not, what is successful and what is not, and you start to develop a visual lexicon of visual language. And this is the essence of proficiency, the essence of style. And especially now in the digital world, like, digital images don't cost anything, and so we can just hold on to the shutter if we want to and take hundreds of images in the same scene with little detriment. And so why not? An image isn't finished until it's edited, especially if you're shooting in RAW, which you should be doing for every single image. There is this kind of common misconception that a unedited image is somehow more pure, I don't know how, in some way, right? But this fact is just totally not true for a whole host of technical reasons that, you know, is out of scope for this particular video. But the point here is that shooting in RAW and then not editing your image is kind of like eating a salad without dressing or without any extra bits on it. It is plain and it is raw. So make sure that you learn post-processing in order to put the final touches on your image, because they all need that kind of love. So if you want a video about learning how to use Lightroom and my own step-by-step, top to bottom process on how I edit images in Lightroom, you can check out my video on that right here or in the description box. Photo walk with other photographers and review. Okay, so a little bit of a growth hack is to go out with other photographers to the same location and then review all of their images and compare them to your own. And what you'll find is how they decided to approach the same scene and the same location that they did, and you'll start to see the gaps in your own approach and your own methodologies, and so that you can fix them and, you know, be more aware of them for the next time you go out into the field. Doing this with a whole bunch of new people every single time really accelerates your growth, and so I highly recommend that you approach it in this way. Some things on auto are totally fine. So there are some like full-on manual Nazis out there that say manual, every single thing that you do in the camera. Now, don't be intimidated by these people. For me personally, even as a professional photographer, I use auto white balance and auto ISO almost exclusively all the time, right? So it's totally fine, especially if you shoot in RAW. Now, if you're gonna use a semi-automatic method of shooting, like aperture priority or shutter priority, I would highly suggest you use shutter priority. For me personally, I do use manual, but I use auto ISO, so take that as you will. Plan and scout. Not all photography is serendipitous and spontaneous. A little bit of planning, a little bit of forethought can go a very, very long way in your overall success for a particular shoot. And using apps like Google Earth or PhotoPills can actually tell you the sun's location anywhere in the world at any time. And you can get really, really good at this, right? You can get really good to the point where you can imagine an entire composition even before you've reached there, so that when you eventually do get there, you have a whole bunch of time saved so that you can experiment and explore the area even further. Okay, finally, let's talk about a few gear-related things. Lenses over bodies. Generally, as a good guide, spend your money on lenses more often than bodies, because lenses tend to have more benefits, more upside when you're spending a little bit more money on them rather than on the bodies. Oftentimes you'll get more performance gains in terms of sharpness and image quality in this way, and the lenses are oftentimes more approachable in terms of price too. So before you get into this, find a mount that you like for a particular given camera brand and stick to that brand and stick to that mount for a very, very long time, so that you can start to build a collection of good lenses. Learn specific gear skills. There are so many bits of gear to learn, and they all have their own specific domain knowledge to them. So say for example, if you are learning landscapes, then you'll probably need to learn how to use a tripod properly and all of the little things that are associated with that. If you're doing portraiture, then you probably need to know how to use a flash. If you're learning street photography, then you probably don't need to learn either of those things, so you know where to spend your time learning. Every category of photography has its own gear and its own techniques, so make sure that you're finding the time to understand which gear is relevant to you depending on the category of photography you're using, and find out the techniques and the skills you need to learn based on those. Learn focal lengths. Lastly, different focal lengths are good for different things and have different effects on your overall compositions in terms of compression, depth of field, a whole bunch of different stuff. For example, if you use a 85mm focal length, then that's generally pretty flattering on the face, and you'll see a lot of portrait photographers use that particular lens. Or if you're using a 200mm lens, then you'll find that the compression in the overall composition will change depending on the depth of things you have in your composition as well. And there is a distinct relationship with that. So whether it's 16, 24, 35, 50, 85, 105, 200, whatever it is, pick a particular focal length and learn its strengths, its weaknesses, its quirks, and then build up your knowledge of all of those different lenses over time. All right, that's it for this video. That was 20 tips for really good foundations for the rest of your photography learning journey. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit that like button, subscribe, and all that good stuff. If you want to join the community, check me out on Instagram, on Patreon, and on Discord. I'll see you in the next video, but until then, get out there and make something that matters. Peace.
Zone A captured. Attention. A capture bonus event will end shortly.
Activating jump drive.
I got that capture bonus. Oh, wait. Drill's ripping through.
Zone A neutralized.
Ripping balls off the chain.
Recharging my shields.
Delivering care package sponsored by FedEx.
Drill's hunting for eggs.
Attention. All zones are controlled by one team.
Tossing thermite.
Give a stick. Recharging my shield.
Zone B has been neutralized.
They neutralized our zone.
I'm back, you egg. Let's scramble some food.
Zone A has been captured.
Thermite grenade out. Look out, grenade.
Jump drive set.
Punching a tunnel. Gotta drill some sensors here. Portal's ready. Need to recharge my shield.
Captured.
Sure, we got a zone. Recharging my shield, Cuzzy.
Jump drive in position.
Open wide. Here comes the drill. Shield, Cuzzy. Great face.
Shops open for VIPs only.
Get the sick. Recharging my shields.
about to win, and to the victor goes the spoils.